banks can be unresponsive. And even when the police are called in, they aren't necessarily interested in making an arrest. An interview with Miami Police Chief John Timoney appears to indicate a hands-off approach to squatting families.
What social good would be served by arresting the mother and then separating her from the children?
In all of their move-ins, no one from Take Back the Land has been arrested, according to Rameau. Since the Trody family moved back into their home, they haven't heard from the police or the bank. But Mary Trody knows that the cops could haul her off to jail anytime they want.
But I don't want to lose the house. I'm just praying every day, praying. Maybe they say, okay, just go ahead and let her have this house.
What is your plan, Mary, if the police come and say, this time you have to go? What's your plan?
We don't know.
Desperate times brings about desperate type solutions. But encouraging people to break the law and potentially be arrested and end up in jail, what good is that doing for those families?
Ron Book is the chairman of the Miami-Dade County Homeless Trust, a county-appointed agency that leads the effort to battle homelessness. He wants to house people left on the streets too, but he's not about to break the law to do it.
I think those people who encourage people to break the law should be punished. And they're the ones that need to be treated harshly, firmly, directly, swiftly, without any reservation.
Are you saying you think that Max Rameau should be charged, should be put in prison, should be...
If Max Rameau is encouraging people to break the law, then Max Rameau should be punished for that.
Book points out that Rameau's actions are taking place in a city that has done more than most urban areas to help the homeless. The Homeless Trust was formed soon after a lawsuit highlighted the city's mistreatment of its homeless population. But in the last 16 years, Miami has turned itself into a model city for dealing with homelessness, expanding shelters, and ramping up prevention efforts. The result? Street homelessness has been reduced by almost 90%.
Our programs are working. Our proactive effort to intercept people before they become homeless is working.
Are you getting more calls from families that are about to become homeless?
Yes. I mean, look, it's no secret. We've got tens of thousands of foreclosures that were filed in 2008, and lots of the calls that we get are families. We will not let a family sit on the street at night. If we find a family that has a need, we have a program, whether I have a bed in my homeless assistance centers or not, we have a bed for them somewhere else.
Why don't you take these families and counsel them to go through the shelter system, become part of the city process to actually get them a permanent home, as opposed to kind of haphazard things?
Well, the shelter system is full. The shelter system is jam-packed. The shelter system right now is not built to take on families, entire families, rather than just individuals.
When a homeless family enters the shelter system, they're sometimes placed in separate facilities because there are only so many beds to go around, with demand being so high.
The fact is, if the shelter system was working and traditional social services were working, we wouldn't have anyone to move into these homes. People would not come and live in this situation if they had the option of living in more secure settings.
People would have the power to make decisions.
Max Rameau has been involved in a lot of political fights in recent years in Miami on a variety of issues, including immigration, free trade, and gay rights. In particular, he's been known for his efforts to combat police brutality against African Americans in Miami, leading protests, and helping to create a civilian investigative panel that oversees the police. Activism, he says, has always been in his blood.
When you were a student in college, did you imagine, okay, I'm going to become a community organizer and I'm going to organize a movement to take back the land and take back homes? You were studying philosophy?
Studying philosophy and African American studies and international relations. And I don't think I either thought it out that far or thought of it in that way. And certainly didn't think about this crisis of land and this crisis of gentrification and housing taking root in the United States in this kind of way and with this kind of force and this kind of extremity.
A few years ago, Rameau realized that the real estate bubble in Miami was set to burst and take his community down with it. On top of that, he says, county officials were ignoring the growing need for public housing for low-income residents, while rich developers were laughing their way to the bank.
The local governments have been extremely irresponsible as it relates to building housing for low-income and moderate-income people.
In 2006, the Miami Herald broke a bombshell investigation of the Miami-Dade County Public Housing Agency, revealing a bureaucracy awash with corruption. Tens of millions of dollars had been doled out to developers for public housing, but many of the units had never been built. Some developers were actually pocketing county dollars for themselves. Oscar Rivero went to prison for taking more than $700,000 out of a county loan to buy a luxurious estate for himself. Raul Masvidal, one of the area's most prominent civic leaders, turned himself in after being charged with siphoning public housing money to buy, of all things, this sculpture of a watermelon for $150,000. He claims he's innocent and is awaiting trial.
Anyone who knows anything about Miami-Dade County politics knows that most of the money which is coming down is not going to end up in the hands or to the benefit of local people. It's going to end up in the hands of politicians and their supporters and their financial backers.
In the wake of the scandals, the federal government took over the housing agency. But public housing was still in short supply. So, Take Back the Land began its vigilante squatting operation in 2006. One person who asked Rameau for help was Nadine Pierre. She was on her way to a PhD in anthropology, working as a researcher to support her family. But when the economy cratered, she found it hard to make ends meet, Rameau says, and she lost her home when she couldn't pay her adjustable-rate mortgage.
We interviewed her, we talked with her, we evaluated the situation, and we ultimately moved her into this home here. You know, she wanted something good and safe and clean for her family and didn't feel like, given her family situation, she was able to get that in the shelters, and the shelters met all of her needs.
But shortly after she moved in, says Rameau, Pierre and her children returned from grocery shopping to find the lock on the door broken and their belongings strewn across the front yard.
It turned out the property management company came, saw that there were things inside, broke into the house, and took all of the belongings out.
In response, Rameau says he decided to organize a media event at the house to force the issue with the property manager. He says the police showed up, but as with the Trody family, they didn't kick out the Pierres, who stayed a few more months in the home before finding other housing.
This is the backyard to the house, and the family actually spent a good chunk of their time here. This is a great place for a family.
Rameau says there is a lot of squatting going on in Miami. Some squatters take over a vacant home with a bad agenda, like selling illegal drugs. But Rameau believes his version of squatting is good for the community. Take Back the Land interviews would-be squatters to make sure they are well-meaning and that they can pay for utilities. And they only move in families, not individuals. Rameau says a reliable neighbor can be a welcome addition to an unstable neighborhood decimated by foreclosure.
One of the things that we're trying to do is build stronger communities, trying to have the families that we're moving in and the communities into which we're moving them.
There are people who live in communities and they'd like somebody to be in those homes. They don't want those homes to be empty. They want somebody to keep the lawn up, make sure they're, keeping the exterior of the buildings up, which maintain their property values. So there is that argument. By the same token, if you live in a neighborhood and somebody has come and broken into the house next door to you, or 3 doors or 5 doors down, you've got to sit back and say, well, if they're willing to break in and steal that house and declare it as theirs, are they going to come and do the same thing to my car?
That might have been the prevailing attitude before, Rameau says. But in 2009, with communities facing decline, he believes there's a whole new attitude towards squatting.
If you would have tried to have done this 5 years ago, what kind of a reaction do you think you would have gotten then?
5 years ago, if we were squatting, I'm sure the neighbors would have gotten together and kicked us out themselves. They would not have even bothered calling the police.
Vacant home, boarded up home, vacant home.
Rameau is hoping that his idea catches on, and that organizations in other cities will lead squatting actions of their own.